Hey there, Wolfpack fans. It's me again, Kenton Gibbs, bringing you another episode of Locked On Wolfpack. Today, we're going to go over two basic things. Number one, the analysis question about the wide receiver room, as well as the AP coaches poll has dropped and NC State is number 13. What does that mean? And again, I'm going to ask these questions about every single position group. It's the receivers' turn up, but before I ask the question, I'm going to give a little bit of analysis about them. So stick around for all that and more on today's episode of Locked On Wolfpack.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So, in terms of what I'm looking at with this team, there are always going to be, when I look at this receiving group, there are always going to be the questions and the moments about like, oh, Emeka Emezi is gone, and it's similar to the running backs room in that you're losing your top guy. But here's the thing: it's not similar because there are so many returners to everybody else who caught passes, everybody else who were meaningful receivers outside of Emeka Emezi, pretty much is coming back. And of course, our running backs were a big part of our running game or our passing game as well. But when you look at that standpoint of it, I mean, Jordan Houston has displayed the fact that he's an amazing pass catcher. So today we're going to talk about the receivers and the tight ends, rather, not just the receivers, but the pass catchers in general, because you got to find somewhere to put the tight ends in, right? Like the guys who do a little bit of everything, they need to have a place too. And this is for them as well. So, first thing first, losing a Emeka Emezi is a big deal, right? Like that's a big deal because I mean, he is the program's all-time leading receiver in terms of receptions. And the receiving core, at my first thought, I thought to myself, man, we're going to need more possession receivers because Thayer Thomas is a guy that can make things happen underneath. He's a really good red zone target, all that type of stuff. But you think to yourself, it can't just be him. It can't just be him. And that's what I thought when I looked at the receiving core until I realized this is not just about the receivers. It's about the pass catchers. When you look at Trent Penick and Christopher Tootle, those are two guys that are going to have an immense impact in terms of getting open underneath, in terms of finding the holes in coverage, sitting in them, making the catches that they need to make. Those are two guys that will thrive in that area so that we don't need a bunch of receivers who can do things out of slot in terms of working underneath and not being vertical threats so much. Because when I look at the receivers and the pass catchers, if I'm looking at just the receivers and not the pass catchers, rather, I'm looking at, okay, who do I look at as more of a vertical threat? Who do I look at as more of a guy who's going to find ways to get open and find ways to make plays underneath and have the sure, steady hands to make the catches in traffic and all that good stuff? I look at Thayer Thomas and Keon Lassane. But when I look at a deep threat, I'm looking at Devin Carter. I'm looking at Porter Rooks. I'm looking at Anthony Smith. And so those are the guys that, I instantly look at and say, hey, these are guys that I'm expecting to be dudes next year in terms of getting down the field. But again, that is a very, it's a way to look at it that says, okay, what do we see? What is going to be the deal in terms of finding ways to have balance? Because realistically, you can't just hit all deep shots all the time. If that were the case, I mean, teams would just play a cover four where their corners are a little deeper and say, hey, figure it out. You don't have the guys to beat us underneath, and we can rally underneath, and we can trust that your guys will drop passes. So that's where I want to say this team is in terms of like I thought that there weren't guys who could catch the ball underneath, but upon a deeper look, there obviously are. And now onto the questions that arise out of this group. The question becoming, obviously, how do you replace your leading receiver in Emeka Emezi? How do you replace him? That is a big body receiver that finds ways to make contested catches. His hands were just very consistent. Did not drop many balls. Like that was the big thing about him. And so when I look at how you go about doing that, I think that the answer is very simple. This team's best bet at replacing him is doing something different. I don't think that we have another him. And some people are like banking on Daryl Jones to come in and be what Emeka was in essence, the Maryland grad transfer. Here's the only problem with that. If it were not for the bowl game last year, the bowl game was the biggest game of his career by far. Uh, he had, I want to say it was like 4 catches for 111 yards and 2 TDs. If it weren't for that bowl game last year, where he absolutely torched Virginia Tech's defense, I think he has about 190 or 200, a little over 200 yards for the entire season. For his entire career, he hadn't amassed 500 yards. Like, yes, this is a former 4 star. Yes, this is the guy who, I mean, the size is there, the frame is there. The when you look at him, and say this should be a guy who can make those tough catches and all that, but we just haven't seen the production. You know what I mean? And a lot of people are like putting a lot into the bowl game, which I get it, but it's tough for me to say like, oh, I'm expecting based upon that game for really great things to happen. So the first question would be, how do you replace a Mech? And I think that it's do something different. I think that it is with a team that pushed the ball downfield a decent amount last year. I think you go even more aggressive with it. I think you go even further with it, and that then raises questions about your offensive line and how you functionally go about doing that. But the reality is, I think that Porter Rooks. I mean, every time you saw him, he seemed to be opened up the seam last year, and so he's going to be a big part of this. But also Anthony Smith being another guy that I don't know why people are not bigger fans of Anthony Smith. I don't know why I'm the only guy beating the table for this, but it's all right. I'm okay with that because last year I was the only guy beating the table for Devin Leary having a banner year, and look how that one worked out. So I'm okay with being by myself on this one, but I think that the idea here would be to be able to hit more deep balls this year because you have more guys who can get deep. You just don't have the same amount or the same guy who is you can throw me that little 4 yard RPO curl all day long, and I'm going to catch it, maybe break a tackle or two, but at worst fall forward for what is just a basic RPO turning to 5-6 yards guaranteed. I don't think we have that guy outside of a Thayer Thomas, but even in that situation, I mean, Thayer Thomas is more of a slot receiver than anything else. So you're in a interesting spot in terms of what comes out of this receiver room. And the next question that comes out to me in this receiver room is Devin Carter ready to be consistent? Is Devin Carter ready to be consistent? The fact of the matter is simple. I have sounded like Groundhog's Day, beating the drum saying Devin Carter is going to get it figured out this year. This was Devin Carter's year. He was going to. I've sound like a broken record saying that. But the reality is, this ain't about what Ken thinks. It's not. It's really and truly not. It's about Devin Carter stepping up and showing, hey, I'm ready to be that guy. I'm ready to make the little passes that we don't think is a big deal. When we look at the end of the Miami game, that is the primest example, the most prime example. He's running underneath, pretty much wide open. If he catches that ball, we all know that first down is guaranteed just because he catches the ball and continues running. He drops the ball. So then we get to fourth down and we don't convert. But the reality is we should have never gotten to fourth. We should have never gotten to fourth if Devin makes that play. And so, and this isn't to pick on him or say, oh, well, he's a terrible player and I don't expect anything else. That was a game that NC State lost 31-30. I am telling you right now, if NC State wins that game, the NC State may go on to win the conference. And I know a lot of people are going to say that sounds crazy, but the reality is this. If they win that game and then win out going forward, okay, let's just put it like this. After that game, they only had the loss to Wake Forest and the UNC game that were one possession games. That's it. Not a single game outside of that one. After the Miami game, you beat Louisville 28-14. You beat Florida 28-13. You beat Florida State 28-14. Wake Forest, you lost 42-45. And then Syracuse, you beat 41-17. And then UNC, you win by 4 points. So the reality is, if you win that Miami game, even if we say, well, you got the big head and it may change one of those outcomes, well, then at that point, you're counting on a changed outcome to get NC State its second conference loss of the year, which one conference loss would have put them in the driver's seat in terms of being in the conference championship game. That's the reality. That's just the reality of what we're looking at there. So it sounds like such a minute thing, and it sounds like I'm kind of picking on them or whatever the case may be. But the reality is this: there is the old proverb of the horseshoe maker who didn't make the horseshoe. Right? Without the horseshoe, the horse can't ride. The horse can't ride. The horse can't deliver the message. The horse can't deliver the message. They don't know where the attack is coming from. The horse can't deliver the message. The war was lost. All because the horseshoe maker didn't make the shoe. It's that simple. It's the little stuff is the important stuff. The extraordinary is accomplished by doing the ordinary things extra well. And so, again, the second question has to be, is Devin Carter ready to be consistent? It's the reality. I love the guy's game. Again, a big body receiver who can fly, who can make the spectacular catch, who can make the freak catch, who can do great things with the ball in his hand once he gets it in his hand. Can he secure those catches to do the things with the ball in his hand? That's the question. Can he do the little functions of his job well? If he does, if he takes that next step to make those the tough catch or to make the mundane catches, if he takes that step to virtually eliminate his drop problem, you've got a dangerous man on your hands. You've got a dangerous man on your hands, and I'm telling you, again, I've beat the table about him doing and being the guy, and this year being his year almost every year. Well, you don't got too many more years, big dog. That's the reality. You're not going to have another year of playing with a guy who you likely won't have another year of playing with a guy who's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. So it's time to get the job done if you're ever going to get it done, Mr. Carter. And speaking of jobs, let me tell you about LinkedIn Jobs. Let me tell you something right now. As small businesses get back in business, it is important that you go ahead and make sure that you get your free postings at LinkedIn Jobs or linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. LinkedIn.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Make sure that you talk to the people you want to talk to faster with LinkedIn Jobs. So, folks, the next question that comes about is this a year where Porter Rooks takes the next step? Because we often talk about when the biggest jump in production comes for players and all that good stuff. And the reality is the jump in production that folks are looking for out of Porter Rooks could be something that, in essence, turns the tide of the season. And I'm not joking about that. I am not being hyperbolic at all. Again, we've talked ad nauseum about how this is a very highly recruited player, a player that everybody wanted to get their hands on. Let's see if year three is the year for him where, I mean, honestly, a lot of people say the biggest jump is from year one to year two, but his year one, his true year one was a COVID year. So things were a little different, right? Like the world was so different. You kind of give a mulligan for that or whatever the case may be. But this should be a year where the game starts to slow down for him. And not only that, I mean, again, when I talk about Emeka Emezi being gone, it's then important for him to have the ability to make up for some of that production. That's just the reality. That's just the reality. If he can't do things to make himself, if he can't do things to, or if things can't be done, if the offense isn't drawn up in such a way to give him the opportunities to put his speed, to put his big play ability on display, I mean, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. And the next question goes out to the tight end room, or more so Tim Beck and how he plans on using the tight ends, particularly Trent Penick. Trent Penick, we talked about him being in a very similar role to what Jay Sam was, and doing many really good things in terms of um, basically lining up all over the field, lining up at running back, lining up at being spread out in the slot, and all that good stuff, and all the things that he did last year. Well, how do we capitalize on him going forward? What is the goal and game plan to say, this is how we're going to take advantage of Trent being who he is? This is where we find the mismatches and all that. Because I mean, realistically, they'll be there. They'll be there. He is that type of guy. Just that's the reality of who he is. Trent Penix came here as a running back, moved to the tight end position, and again, his ability to make plays in multiple different ways, to be a matchup nightmare for safeties, and to have the ability. He has running back ability when he gets the ball in his hands after the catch. So him being, again, when I talk about the offense needing guys who can get open underneath and who can make those catches, Trent Penix is going to be one of the important guys in doing that, doing a part of the role that Emeka Emezi played very prominently. And yes, he's not an outside receiver or anything like that. Yes, I don't expect him to take a lot of snaps out there. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, again, if you look at what offenses do well, you can then look at the schemes drawn up to stop them. If this offense does what I predicted will do in taking more deep shots and finding ways to push the ball downfield more, what then happens is defenses start to kind of be afraid of your speed, or have to play off because of your speed, or play looser coverage because of that. And when that happens, you're going to have guys open up underneath. And the guys, when you're talking about guys opening up underneath, Thayer Thomas is always going to get the bulk of that attention. And so you need a guy who can either release some of that tension in terms of, or release that attention in terms of underneath coverage from there. Where do you get that from? Trent. He should be that guy. And again, where do you use him in terms of, I've already talked about how the running back room may need some help in supplementing production. He could be a part of that. That is not out of the realm. I've talked about who's their big back, their power back, their fall forward guy. Again, he came in as a running back. He's 6'3", 230 pounds. So how is Trent Penick going to be used is a big question there. And there's a lot to be said about that tight end room as well when you got a guy like Christopher Tootle who is there as well. But I think that pretty much sums up the questions. And now we get into NC State being ranked 13th overall in the coaches AP poll. Again, it's exciting. It's an exciting time to be an NC State fan. But the reality is NC State still has to go out and play great ball. That's the reality. That's the reality. This team is getting the respect. They're getting the love. Nobody can say, "Oh, NC State isn't being shown the red carpet isn't being rolled out," and there's all this doubt and hate going around and swirling around us. The belief is there. Folks are now having the talks of, well, how good could NC State be? It's time for this team to go show and prove. So 13th overall in the preseason, that's a huge deal. That's a huge deal. That's, again, expectations are higher in Raleigh than they have been in quite some time. In quite some time. So what happens? What happens next? Well, in the words of Denzel Washington, what a duty, what a responsibility it is that you have. What a responsibility it is that this team has. And again, this is a year that I've said multiple times, and I will stick by. This is a program shifting year, or this is a program defining year. This defines, are you a team that will go forward and compete year in and year out for the conference, or will you mire in mediocrity? I think anything less than an appearance in the ACC championship, to me, that's a failure. Unless Clemson comes out and is like, DJ shows something that we just did not know was there, and he's just a dominant, crazy. Again, y'all want to talk? Listen, as much as I hate quarterbacks, as many times as I've been wrong about some takes and all that good stuff, I can tell you, last year, in terms of college football, I in terms of ACC quarterbacks, tell me, what did I say about DJ last year? Or actually, I'll tell y'all, I said a lot of his yardage came to Travis Etienne, and that's a problem. That's a problem for this Clemson team because Travis Etienne is one of the best backs in college football history. And not only that, he is an absolute game breaker and matchup nightmare for any linebacker. And so when you don't have that and you kind of struggle throwing the other guys, hmm, hmm. But again, I'm telling you, that the reality is if DJ doesn't come out and do something crazy, or this Cade freshman that a lot of folks are talking about at Clemson doesn't come out and do something wild, I'm letting this be known very simply. This NC State team has to make the conference championship at minimum. And heck, I'd even go as far as to say, even if DJ does have a great year, this team still has to figure out a way. Period. Still has to figure out a way. Again, I am not discounting how good Clemson's defense is probably going to be. Not discounting that. But the fact of the matter is, all the stars have aligned for you to show up and show out and for this to be your year. Again, time to show and prove. Point blank, period. I'm betting the state gets the job done, but that's just the reality of what we're looking at. If you're a bettor, go to betonline.net. It's the fastest and easiest way to check all your sports betting needs. Find all your favorite sports events at the number one online source for odds, lines, and games. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They have you covered. Head to BetOnline today to learn more about the trends and action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. So we're about to land this thing, but I hope that this is. I hope that we've gotten some things, or we're on the same page about questions I want to see answered. And honestly, I wanted to include a question in there about Daryl Jones, about how good is he really. But at the end of the day, I don't feel like it's a wise decision to bet on a unproven transfer, to bet on a transfer that, like, it's one thing if you're looking at a receiver room that's just like, oh, this is crazy. But, and Joker Phillips and him reuniting is something that people talk about a lot. I don't know. We'll see. I would be delighted for him to blow everything I'm thinking out of the water. But again, the questions that I have for the receivers or the pass catchers on this team, how are you going to replace Emeka? Is Devin Carter ready to be consistent? Because that's going to be pivotal. Is Porter Rooks ready to take that next step? And how is this team going to use Trent Penick? I think that those things, those things will go a long way into telling us what type of season this will be for the Pack. All right. I think that these guys playing well, having great seasons, all that good stuff are pivotal to NC State going on a great year. Thank you all so very much for coming out, Wolfpack Nation. I appreciate you every single time. Y'all make this show what it is. Peace and love, y'all. And as always, go Pack.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.